Hello everyone! Welcome to our video on Wix Blocks, Wix's native app editor created for developers and designers alike. I'm Bar, a product manager on the Wix Blocks team at Wix. In this video, we will build a quiz application from start to finish. We will use many Blocks features, such as drag and drop elements, custom panels, and a dashboard page. I will start with a quick overview of what the application looks like on a site, and then we will move on to the Blocks editor. Later, my colleagues Miri and Ido will lead you through the fundamentals of responsive design and how to code your app's functionality. So let's get started. Now I'm going to show you the application, how it's going to look like on a Wix Studio site. This is going to be the application that we are building today. As you can see, this is a Wix Studio site about music, and if we scroll down the screen, we can see the quiz application. The quiz application has a couple of features. You can see, first of all, the title of the quiz, the multiple answers that the user has to choose from, and once the user chooses one of the answers, you can also see that there's an incorrect and a correct answer, and the user can also start over and try again. This is the app we're going to be building today. So let's go over to the Wix Blocks workspace. This is the Wix Blocks workspace, and I'll go over some key features before we get started. On the left-hand side, you have all the add element components that you can add to your application. Here you can add design elements from the Wix design system that are very similar to the one that you have on Wix Studio. You can also add widgets and plugins through the Widgets and Design panel. Here you can already see a blank widget, but you can add additional widgets and plugins through the menu. You can also add design presets. Here is the Editor Experience tab. In this tab, you can really configure how the app is going to be handled on the site, and you can choose all the different types of configurations for each type of element. You can also design and configure custom panels. This is the dashboard page sidebar, in which you can add a dashboard page to your app where users can manage their data and their app settings. You also have here the code panel, which you can add public and backend code. You can install packages from NPM, and you can also add databases to your app. I'm happy to invite my colleague Miri to explain the fundamentals of web application design and how to make your app fully responsive to all screen sizes for the next part of this video.
Thanks, Bar. Hey everyone, I'm Miri, a product designer at the Wix Blocks, and I'll show you how to design the quiz app. So let's get started. First, I will rename the widget quiz. I'm starting with choosing a layout tool. The layout tool will define the widget's responsive behavior, and it's a very recommended step to start with. Inside the layout tool, we will place elements such as titles, paragraphs, and buttons. You can see inside the Add Elements panel the layout section. In Blocks we have different layout tools: CSS Grid, Stack, Repeater, Flexbox, and more. In this case, I will use the Flexbox, since it has a wrapping behavior when resizing it. By using a Flexbox, I can create a fully responsive widget from desktop to mobile. So let's add it to stage. I will stretch it so it gets the size of the widget, and each item will get a 45% width. I will reset the gaps to 0, and in order to trigger the wrapping behavior we have to set a min width for the Flexbox item. You can see that the default one is 50 pixels. When the item gets to 50 pixels, it will turn out to one column, just like we see now. But we want this to happen earlier, so we'll give a higher number here. I will change it to 300 pixels, which is kind of the size of a mobile, and by that we know that it will wrap on mobile. Great. After adding the Flexbox and defining the basic layout, I can go and add the rest of the component. I will start with the image, and I will drop it into the left side of the Flexbox. I'm attaching it to the Flexbox item and stretching it in order for it to get the size of the item. Now I can go and add the text component that will use us as a quiz question. Inside the text section, you can see different text styles. The text components you see in our Add Elements panel are all aligned to the Wix design system. That will help your app to be consistent with other Wix apps. In this case, I will use the 24 pixel title and I will attach it to the right Flexbox item. You can see a small link icon right here on the color swatch. It indicates that the text color is linked to the palette. That means that after installation, this element will get the user side's colors. After finishing adjusting the title, I will go to the Add Elements panel, and under the button section, I will add a button. This button will be used as the Start Over button. I will double click it and change the text to Start Over. I will select the text and icon option, and I will change the icon to a refresh icon. Great. Now I'm going to design it. The text will be a bit smaller. Great. The border will be linked to this themed color. We'll give it a 8 pixel rounded corners and we'll make it a bit smaller by layout. Let's see, looks good. We don't need this min height, so I will just remove it. And we can now go and design the other states. The hover one will get a black border, which is also themed. And the disabled one looks just fine. We will make it a bit smaller by width. And seems like we're done with the button. Now let's build the answer composition. I could build it right here over the main widget, but in this case I want to show you how to use widget in widget. Widget in widget can serve us in various needs. We can add an extra functionality like creating custom panels or different presets. We can create a reusable element and place it multiple times across our main widget, and it might also help us to gather parts of the widget in groups in order to work in a modular way. Today we are going to use widget in widget in order to create different presets for the same composition. So I'm going on the widget and design panel and creating a new widget. We can either select a pre-designed widget and adjust it to our needs or just start from blank. Today I will start from the blank widget. I will again take a look at my structure. I want the answers to wrap responsively when resizing the widget, and I want the styles to be same for all the answers. In this case, the repeater will answer those needs. I'm going again to the Add Elements panel, to Layout section, and adding a repeater to the stage. I will stretch it, and now I will add a button to the items. I'm going to the Button section and dropping a button in. I will align it to the top and to the left and set it to 100%. You can see that there is still a gap left here. It comes from the repeater min height. I will change the number here to a small number, and I will go to the first box to the stage and change it also to a small number. Great. Now we get kind of a hug behavior. Looks good and wrapping responsively. Now let's design buttons. I'm starting with a regular state. The text is just fine. The border will get this color just like the Start Over button. The corner will get 8 pixel rounded corners. And the layout will get a bit bigger size. And a big padding from the right, in which I'm going to place the icon that indicates whether the question is correct or incorrect. I want the layout to be aligned to the left and to allow text wrapping. Now let's go to the hover state. The text is just fine. The border will be black just like the Start Over one. And we'll give it a background which is a tint of the action color. No, we'll keep it white. Okay. Now let's place inside the button the icon. I'm going to the media and adding the icon. This is an SVG I uploaded in advance, but you can choose any SVG from our media manager. I'm dropping it to stage and setting it to fixed. It will get 24 pixels and I will attach it to the item. I will align it to the middle and give it 12 pixel margin from the right. Let's see how it looks. Looks good. Last, I want to delete all the backgrounds from all the unnecessary layers. The stage could be 0% opacity. Same for the repeater item. The only element that gets border is the button. Let's see, 100%, that's good. Now, after finishing creating the first preset, we want to create the second one. Presets enable us creating a variety of layouts and styles to the same components. We can change element style and layout between presets. Yet, there are changes that are not supported between presets. An example for that is attaching an element to another container. This is a cross-preset action and will be applied on all of your existing presets. Also, changing the contents, like text and images, is a cross-preset action. Now let's create a vertical layout preset for the answers composition. I'm going to click the plus icon and create another preset. You can see that I got a perfect duplication of the first one. I can now change a bit the layout or the style. In this case, I want the answers to get only one vertical column. So I'll go to the Layers panel, select the repeater component, and set it to rows, to list. Now you can see that I have one column only. Okay, seems like we're done with the presets. Let's rename this widget and call it Answers. Great, looks like we created two design presets for Answers widget. Let's rename it. This will be horizontal and the second one will be vertical. Let's also rename the widget Answers. Now I want to place the Answers widget inside the Quiz widget as a widget in widget. Let's see how we can do it. I'm going back to the quiz, to the main widget, and opening the Add Elements panel. Here, under my widget, I can see the widget created by me. I will select in this case the horizontal one and drop it to stage. I will attach it to the right flexbox item. Now I want to put all those components in a layout tool. Since it's all organized in a vertical way, I can stack them together. I will select them and stack them. Stack enables the content to change height or length while preserving the gaps between the elements. By that, we can prevent overlapping of elements one over each other. I will set the item spacing to 24 pixels. Great, and I will go item by item inside the stack and I'll make sure that it's responsive. I will set it to rep and 100%. This one is fixed, but I want it relative width with 100%. And the button is just fine. Also, the stack itself should be 100%. And it will be aligned to the left and to the middle. Now, in order to get some spacing here, I will choose the flexbox item and set up a 32 pixel padding. Great. Now let's play a bit with the handles and see how it behaves. Looks pretty good, only that the image here is too short. We will go to the item in which the image is stretched and set up a min height of 240 pixels. Great! The first preset of the quiz app is now ready, and we can create another one. and the first one horizontal. I want the vertical one to stay vertical always. And I want it to also have a background image. I will start with the background image. I'm opening the Add Elements panel, and under Media, I'm choosing the image I want. I'm stretching it. You cannot see it right now because it's in the last layer right here. Let's change this. I will set up a 0 opacity for the Flexbox item, and I will take this image out of the stretch and set the item 0 opacity as well. Now let's design the image. I will set a 200 pixel for the width and for the height. And in order for it not to get too big, I will give it a maximum width of 200 pixels and set it scale proportionally. Now, the image itself will get a little bit of background overlay. In this specific case, since our content is placed over an image, I prefer not to link the colors to the user's site palette. I want my chosen colors to stay fixed, regardless of what the site palette is. In order to do this, I'm choosing colors from the custom area. You can see that this black is custom and it will not change according to the user's site palette. I will do the same for the quiz question. I will set it to custom white and it will stay white no matter what the palette on the site is. Now I will choose the stack and align it to the middle. And I will give some rounded corners to the image. Let's see how it behaves. Since I want it to stay in a vertical way, I need to choose the Flexbox and change the layout from mosaic to rows. You can see that it stays vertical now. I will set up a padding for the all Flexbox component, 32 pixels from each side, and I will delete the padding from the item itself. On the Flexbox, I will set up a 32 pixel gap. Great. Now the only thing missing is changing the widget in widget preset to the vertical preset we created before. On the context menu, I will go to the change preset and select the vertical one. Now we will see a vertical layout. So we finished designing the second preset, but since we add a background image to this preset, it was added as well to the horizontal one. You can't see it because it's in the last layer. It pushes the layout. In this case, I will set it to hide on this preset, and now it looks just good. I'm going back to the vertical and checking a bit the sizes, and I see that all looks good. Great, it seems like we finished designing the widget. The only thing left to do is to curate a bit. You could see that along the design process, I kept on resizing the widget to check its responsive behavior. After finishing, I also play with different text and images in order to check how the layout handles different contents. It is very important since we can't know which content will be inserted by our users. So let's change a bit the size or the length of the content. By that, I see that there is no overlapping. Great. You can also show and hide items and see if the layout behaves in a collapse and expand way. I'm also checking the theme after finishing because I want to make sure elements behave as I defined. I can go to the Test Theme panel on the preview mode. This panel shows different themes. I'm moving between them to check if the styles are changing or not. By that, I can understand if elements are linked to the theme or not. In this preset, everything is linked, and as you can see, everything is changing by color and by font style. In the second one, we defined the title and the background overlay color to be fixed, so I expect it not to change. You can see that it's not changing, and just behaves as I defined. Amazing! So that's it. We got the quiz structure and design ready. Now let's create a dashboard page. From the dashboard, the user will be able to add his own texts and images to the widget. To add a dashboard page, I'm going to the dashboard panel and I'm adding a page. You can see the dashboard page as a default template. This is the Wix design system conventions, and we provide it to you in order to help you stay consistent to the Wix app's best practices. On the Add Elements panel, you will find different layouts and components that will help you create your dashboard page, all designed according to the Wix design system. But let's start with the basic layout. I will select this container and create 2 more columns. The left one will hold the inputs in which the user will insert the quiz question and the quiz answers. The right one will be for the image inputs, and in the middle one we will place a ready or button group in which the user will mark which answer is the correct one. So let's start. I'm going to the Add Elements panel, and under Input I will choose the first text input. I'm placing it right here on the left, and I will change it to quiz question. No need in a placeholder. This field is required. That's it. And now I will duplicate it 4 times, and these will be the inputs for the answers. First answer. This one will be for the second answer. The third one. Third answer. And the last one. I'm double clicking in order to get a setting panel. Great. You can see that it's all listed in a vertical way, so I can stack it together. And once again, I will go item by item and fix the responsive behavior. I want it to get 100% of the stack. And the second one. Third, and the last one. I will align everything to the left and set up 28 pixel margins. I will give here a little bigger ones, and I will align it to the top and to the left. You can see that it exceeds the container. I will go to check the sizing of the container. It's set to 85% and I want it to be 100%. Amazing. Wait a minute, I made a mistake here with the spacing. I want only this one to change. Good. Now the stack itself as well should be 100% of the grid where it sits here. Great. Now you can see that the header here is not stretched over the 3 columns, so I will do it. I'm holding the shift and selecting all the columns. The same for the line. Good. Next, we will create the image input. On the Add Elements panel, I will go to Media and drop in an image component. I will place it on the right side and add also the image input. I will place it above. Now I will select both of them and place it in a container. I will take it a bit down here in order to make space for the title. The title will say main image I will make it the same width and I will duplicate it. This will be the title for the background image. I will duplicate also the image input and put it here below. Now I want to choose them all and stack them together. I will give a spacing of 8 pixels and I will make this one a bit bigger. And once again I'm going element by element inside the stack and make sure it behaves as I want. I want it to be wrap with 100%. Also the container and the other title and the last container. I will choose the stack and make it 100% as well. Wait, let's see. Here. And you can see that the image inside is set to fixed. That's why it didn't grow. Relative width of 100% and relative width of 100%. Great, looks good. I will align it to the top. And now we're left with a selection of the radio buttons. I will drop it into the middle grid column and I will change the text to mark as correct. In this component, the user will tell us which answer is the correct one out of his options. On the setting panel, I will delete the field title. And on the layout panel, I will make a bigger gaps so it will fit to the answers inputs. Let's see. A bit smaller. Great. Now, I want this CSS grid column to get max content and to hug the radio button group. I want to align it to the left and make it a bit wider. Good. I will place it again and I will make sure that the margin set to pixels. Good. Now, I want the inputs to be a bit bigger, 2 FRs. And seems like we're good. We're only missing the gaps of the CSS grid. Amazing. We can adjust it a bit more, like making the image input bigger so it will align. We can set up this container to auto so it will hug the height. And this is it. I guess we're done. That's it for the all widget and dashboard structure. We can now move on and implementing some functionality. I'm happy to invite my colleague Ido to implement the app's functionality through code and some out-of-the-box features.
Thanks, Miri. Now that we've seen how to design the app, we will add its functionality. In this part, I will show you how to create a database for your app, implement the widget logic, customize the site user experience, and create an app dashboard. So the first thing that we're going to do is creating a database for our app. Our databases are called collections, and in order to create one in Wix Blocks, we will go to the Code tab here, and we have the sub-tab called Databases. I will click Create Collection and choose Start from Scratch. Now, you might have gotten a modal that asks you to create a namespace. A namespace is what aggregates all the code in the code package and the collections under the hood for your app. This is how you can reference your collections, and your users can also reference the collections in their site where the app is installed in, and also use the functions that you export from your code package in your public and backend files. Please create a namespace. Do notice that the namespace name can't be changed after chosen, and you can choose whether you want the prefix of the namespace to be your company name or your username. Now that you have a namespace, I'm going to choose Start from Scratch. The name of our collection is going to be Quiz, because we're building a quiz together. Now that we have this part, we can add fields to our collection. So the first field we're going to add is actually of type text, and this is going to be the question itself. So I'm going to write here, question. Second field that we're going to add is of type image, and it's going to be called quiz image. You can see that we have here the field ID already. And the last one is going to be another field of type image, and it's going to be called background image. Great, so we have the quiz collection. Now let's go and create another collection that is going to be called question. This collection is going to be specific for the question in our quiz. So I'm going to choose Start from Scratch again, click Next, and write question. And now we're going to change here and edit the name of the field to be answer title. Another field that we're going to add is a Boolean field, and it's going to be correct answer, which indicates which one of the answers is the correct answer. And that's it. We have the schemas of both of our collections, and now we can use them in our site. Now, before we're going to connect the data to the elements on stage, there is only one thing that we're going to do before. So if we'll go here to this tab, Public and Backend, we see that we have here the ability to add all sorts of code files. We're going to add a public code file. We're going to call it constants. This file will hold all the constants that we need to use in our app. So I'm going to delete the boilerplate here. The first thing that we're going to add and export is the collection ID for the quiz collection. So I'm going to write export const quiz collection ID. And now I can find it here under the Databases tab, and I can click here, Copy Collection ID. I'm going to put it inside of brackets as a string. And another thing that I'm going to write is here, Export const question collection ID. Of course, this needs to be in a camel case. And I'm going to copy this one as well and paste it here. And now we have both of our collection IDs exported and ready to use in our other code files. So now the next thing that we're going to do is actually connect the data from our collections to the elements on stage. So in order to do so, what I'm going to do is use a feature called data binding. This feature is a no-code feature that lets you, in just a whiff, connect the fields that you've created to the components on stage. So let's do it together. The first thing that I'm going to do is choose here the button inside the repeater. Here I can see the link action button that says connect to CMS, and I'm going to click it. I got this panel on the right that asks me to add a dataset. A dataset is a controller that functions as a pipe between the collection and the elements on stage. This is actually what takes the data from the collection and puts it in the applicable field that we decide for the elements on stage. So now I can choose which collection I want to create a dataset for. The collection I'm going to choose is question, because we're inside the answers widget. And now I'm going to just click the label and choose from the drop-down the answer title. And that's it. This is all it takes in order to connect the data. Let's do it also for the quiz itself. So I went to the quiz widget. Here we're going to connect the data for the question and both of the images. So let's choose the question. And I see here that I already have the add a dataset. If you don't have it directly, please click on the link action button. And I'm going to choose this time the quiz collection. I've created a dataset. And now I can see that here I can choose for the text to connect the question field. And that's it. Let's now connect the images. I'll choose here the quiz image. I already have the dataset ready, so I can just choose from the dropdown the quiz image. And now I see that I don't have here, because it's hidden, the background image. So let's go to the vertical preset and let's open the layers panel. I see here image 2. And now, after choosing from the dropdown, I'll click background image, and that's it. Now everything is connected. This is all it takes in order to connect data from your collections to the elements on stage inside of Wix Blocks. So now, it's actually time to implement our code. So the first thing that we're going to do is to write inside the constants file the URLs for the indications that we have on the quiz itself. So let's click here and choose the inner component of the vector image. I see here that I have changed vector out. And now I can go to my site files. And here I have the wrong SVG. I'm going to copy the URL and go here to my constants file. And now, again, I'll export the URL itself. I'm going to call it wrong answer indication src. And let's also do the same thing for the correct indication. And now going to constants, click right here, export const correct answer indication src, and that's it. Okay, so we have all we need in the constants file. So now let's go to the answers widget. Now we can start writing our code. So actually the first thing that we're going to do is import Wix data. This is because we're going to use it in our code. And also let's import the things that we need from our constants file. So I'm going to write here import. I'll leave the brackets empty. I'm going to write here from public. This is how we use exported functions and variables from our public and backend files in our side of our app. Here I'm going to write constants. And you can see that I get auto-completion for the thing. So here we need the question collection ID, the wrong answer indication ID, src, and the correct answer indication src. Great. So now let's start implementing our code. So what we'll do here is actually create and implement the callback for the onClick for each one of the answers. So once a user clicks the answer, he will get the indication on the answer he clicked, also for the correct answer in case the user is wrong, and some other things that we're going to use in our app. So the first thing we're going to do is fetch the data. I need an await because Wix data is asynchronous. But I also need to add it here inside my onReady. onReady is the entry point for the widget's code. This is what initializes the code, runs once the widget is rendered, and here you need to write all the code for the rendering of the widget. So I'm going to write Wix data dot query. This function requires a collection ID, so let's pass question collection ID, and I can take this down. You see I formatted the code quickly using Shift, Option, and F. And now find. And lastly, then to catch the promise that has been resolved, I'm going to take here a parameter called res and pass it. And now I'm going to put it inside the data object in the repeaters API. I'm going to pass it as res.items. And now actually I have the data from my collection inside of my repeater. The next thing that I'm going to do is actually implement the logic that requires the init of each item inside of my repeater. So let's write repeater. Here we have a function called onItemReady. This function is triggered once the repeater has new data loaded to its data object, and we can this way init everything according to the new data. I'm going to pass here $item. This is how we reference each item inside of the repeater, and item data. So we have here a function to init each one of our repeater items. So the first thing that we want to do is actually call $item with vector image, and we want to collapse the vector image of each item inside of the repeater. Another thing that we want to do is actually hold an array for all the vector images, so later on we can collapse all of them together in a case where we want to restart the quiz. So let's create a new variable here, const vector images. This is going to be an array. Let's go back, and now all we need to do here is vector images, push, and put the vector image with the item suffix for this specific vector image. Great. Next thing that we're going to do is actually implement the onClick callback for each one of the buttons inside of the repeater. So $item. Here we have button 1, onClick, onClick, and now we have a callback. So the first thing that we want to do is to disable all the buttons. So here you see that I used the $W, and this is because I want to do a quick action on all of the buttons together. So here we're going to write disable. And now what we want to do is actually see that if we have the correct answer, we want to expand the vector image and also put the correct indication in the vector image. So what we're going to do is $item vector image SLC. And now inside of our item data we have the correct answer, right? Because this is what we have from the collection. So let's write item data correct answer question mark. And now what we have is, if it's the correct answer, we want to pass the correct answer indication SRC. And if it's a wrong answer, we want to pass the wrong answer indication SRC. And now just expand the vector image. The next thing that we wanted to do is to not trigger the entire function and return from the callback right away in case we already answered, in case the user already answered. So in order to do that, we're going to use the widgets API. The widget API is something that you can expose to external users and also use inside of your widget. We have here on the right properties that you can be passed to the widget and also be changed and exposed outside and used inside of the widget. Custom events that you can fire, and also functions that you can expose and then run in the context of the widget. We're going to add each one of them. The first thing that we're going to add is a new property. So here, after clicking add new property, we're going to write answer was chosen. This is the property name, and the display name will be answer was chosen. This is going to be a property of type Boolean with a default value of false. Let's click create. And now at the beginning of the callback, what we're going to do is write a condition that checks that if an answer was chosen, just return. So if $widget, and now this is how we reference properties inside of the widget itself. So if an answer was chosen, just return. And also, in case the onClick was triggered, we want to actually set the answer was chosen to true in order to not trigger or let the user trigger it again. So let's write $widget props answer was chosen equals true. Another great thing that we're not going to use, but it's important to notice, that we have here the onProps changed. This functions gives you the ability to write custom logic for the case where props had been changed, and this event is being caught by the widget and this function runs. This way you can actually interact better with the change of props by your users. Another thing that we're going to do is create a custom event and fire it. So let's add here an event called answer chosen. Click create. And now in order to fire the event, all we need to do is write here inside the callback again, $widget, fire event, the name of the event, and we can also add data. So here, let's add the data, answer, and what we need is actually the button label. So we have here button and label. Great. Now for the last thing in our onClick callback, we actually want to implement the case where the user chosen the wrong answer. So let's add on top a global variable called trigger correct answer indication and init it to null. And now inside the onItemReady, but outside of the onClick, we want to check if we are in the case of the correct answer. So if we are, what we need to do is to assign a callback for the function. So let's write trigger correct answer indication. Now do notice this needs to be a let because we're changing the value. And here what we're going to do is put inside of the $item vector image src, the correct answer indication src. We also going to expand the vector image for the specific item, and lastly we're going to mark and make the button enabled to give it a different look from the other buttons. And now once we have this, let's write here if triggered correct answer indication. Then we want to trigger the function, and that's it. So we have the onClick for our function, the onItemReady, and the data. The last thing that we need to do for the widget is create an external function. So here I clicked functions. We see that you get a new function with a descriptor. So our function is not going to get any parameters, and the return value is going to be void. And let's change the name of the function to be reset question. We can see here that the name had already been changed. So what we want to do here is first of all set the props answer was chosen to be false. This way the users can interact with the widget again. The second thing that we're going to do is to enable all the buttons inside of the repeater. And lastly, we're going to collapse all the vector images. So we have the array vector images, and now for each we're going to pass the vector image and just collapse the vector image. This works because we already have the $item as an item in the array itself. And now we just deleted the parameter here, and we have our entire widget's code. So after we have the answers full functioning code, let's write the quizzes code. So here, again, let's remove some things that we don't need. And here, we're just going to interact with the event that we get from the widget, from the inner widget, and also give the ability to decide whether we have or don't have the ability to start over. So the first thing that we're going to do is actually choose the Start Over button and change its ID to be Start Over btn. And now what we want to do is first start over btn.collapse, because at the beginning of the quiz this button will be collapsed. And the second thing is to set for the onClick callback the reset widget, the function that we exposed from the inner widget. So here we're going to write onClick, and now we have $W answers, and we have here the widget itself. And here we're going to use reset question, and that's it. And now we want to expand the button only when the answer was chosen. So we have the custom event from our inner widget. So let's use it. We have here $W answers. Now we have we have on answer chosen, and now we can write its callback here. But we don't want to always show the button, only if the user wants so. So let's also create a property here. Let's call this property allow start over, with the display name allow start over. And here the type is going to be also Boolean, and the default value will be false. Now inside of our onAnswer chosen callback, we will check if $widget.props.allow start over, then start over button dot expand. And that's it for the implementation of our widgets code. Now we have both of the widgets functioning and work together. This is a great time to go and look at the editor experience tab. If we click here in the editor experience, we see that we have two tabs. The first one is configuration and the second one is custom panels. Custom panels gives us the ability to create a custom panel for a widget and gives the users the ability to interact with it easily. So let's click create panel and call the panel settings panel. Now we see that we have here a panel that we can add all sorts of components to. We have here panel title, so let's change it to be settings. And now let's add a couple of components. The first component that we're going to add by clicking here add element is going to be a text divider. And let's click settings and change the title to be allow start over. The second component that we're going to add is a toggle. This toggle will give us the ability, or actually the user, to decide whether they want to allow start over. So let's click settings, change the title to be allow. Now we want this to be based on our properties. So we see here that we have a couple of packages. The first package is called Wix widget, and it controls the widget's properties, design presets, and more. The second package is called Wix editor. This one interacts with the editor by removing or storing widget elements, opening dashboards, and much more. And now, let's write our code for the panel. We see that we also have here an onReady, which again functions as the code that initializes the widget, or in this case the panel that is being rendered. We see here that this function is already async, and that's because Wix widget and Wix editor are both asynchronous. So let's write const. I'm going to leave these brackets empty. Await Wix widget.getProps. And now I can just get here for the auto completion allow start over. Now that I have this, I can just put in the toggle checked API the allow start over. This way, once the user will open the panel, you'll see the props that you already have for the widget. The second thing that we're going to do is for the toggle itself, we're going to implement the onChange logic. So you have here a callback. The callback also needs to be async because Wix widget is asynchronous. Let's write await Wix widget set props. This way we're setting the props for the widget. We see here that we have auto completion, allow start over, and then we'll just pass the value from the toggle itself. And that's it. We have the functioning code for our panel. Now let's go and connect it. So let's go back to the configuration tab. And we see here that we already have the action buttons that we can decide to expose for the widgets in our configuration tab. So let's click here action button settings on the settings one, or actually it might say something else, but for the main action. And then we see here that we have panel. We choose the settings panel, and let's call this the label settings. You can also see that we can connect those things to the dashboard, and we'll do this later. Another thing that we can do here is decide which components can be or cannot be removed, or whether the widget can be duplicated or resized, which action buttons are we going to expose. So let's choose the inner widget here and mark it as element can't be selected. This way it won't be removed as well. This is how we can control the user's behavior with our app. Now let's go and create the dashboard's code. So I'm going to the dashboard. We also have here the components that had been added. And now let's change a bit the components. So we need to change, first of all, the IDs for the components. So I've chosen the quiz question input, and I'm going to call it question input. Now the first answer is going to be called first answer input. And this way also for the second, third, and fourth, second answer input, third answer input, and just here, fourth answer input. Let's call this one, the radio group, correct answer indication. And for the images, let's choose the image and call it quiz image, and the upload component to be called quiz image input. And we'll do the same for the background image. So background image and background image input. So for all the components, we want to set a validity check. So the first thing that we want for the image input is to write here that the max number of files is just 1 and mark this field as required. Also for the quiz, so here for the quiz image, I'm going to choose required. Here in the settings of our radio group, I'm going to write that I'm going to choose required check, and then I want to manage the choices. So here for all the values, I'm going to write just 0, 1, 2, and 3. This will help us later on in our code, and we can choose here this way the correct answer. And added value 3. And now, lastly, for the inputs, the text inputs, I'm just going to put here required. And we see this is already required, this one as well, and also the others. So now, let's implement the code of our dashboard. But in order to do so, the first thing that we're going to do is import a couple of things. First thing is Wix data again, as we're going to use it as well here, and also from our constants file. So you see here I already left the empty brackets from public constants, and here we need the question collection ID and the quiz collection ID. Now, let's start implementing a few util functions that we'll use later on. The first one is going to be clean collection. So I'm going to write this const clean collection. For the implementation of our dashboard's code, we have two approaches. The first approach is to write for each component and its ID the specific code, which means we'll have first answer option, reset, second answer input, reset, and so on. Another approach, and this is what we're going to use, is actually have arrays of our input IDs and then use them in a more clear way. So let's create two arrays. The first array is going to be called text inputs. This array will hold all the inputs of our text. So I'm just going to copy and paste each one of them. First one, second one, fourth, and then the quiz. The question input. And now let's do the same with the image inputs. So let's take the quiz image input and the background image input. And now we can see how this really makes our code more readable and easy to write. So here we want to clean all the input fields. So for the text inputs, we're going to run with a for each function. We're going to pass text input ID. And then for each of the text inputs, text input ID, we're going to put inside the value undefined. Sorry, just a typo. And now here, for the same component with $W text input ID, I'm just gonna write reset validity indication. Next thing that we're gonna do is actually do the same for each one of the images. So let's write image inputs for each and then pass image input ID. And here we have what we're going to do is actually we have an API called reset for each input. So let's write $W image input ID. We have here reset. And another thing that we're going to do is actually put the images that we upload to the images themselves that we have in the dashboard. So here, what we want to do is write $widget, $W, sorry. Here, we're going to have tag and then the image input ID, but this time we're going to replace the substring input with an empty string. And now the src, what we're going to do is add here const default image src, and let's take it from the quiz image. And now let's just write it default image src. And lastly, we want to to reset also the radio group. So I'll have here correct answer indication, value to be undefined, and also correct answer indication, reset validity indication. Another two util functions that we're going to write is to check whether our inputs are valid. So let's write const is texts valid. And we're going to iterate over the text inputs and choose every. This way we are going to check that each one of the items stands in the require bar that we have, which is that there is in the text and in the image. So here we're going to have text input ID, and then $W, the hashtag, text input ID, and then valid. For the images, we're going to have is images valid, and here image inputs, again every. We have here image inputs ID, and here how we're going to check it is that we're going to check that the value length is greater than 0. We have this because actually the required amount is 1, and this is also the limit that we set in the panel. So $W, we have here the hashtag, $, and image input ID. And here .value.length greater than 0. The next util function that we're going to write is going to be update validity indications. So let's write const update validity indications. And we can actually just copy what we wrote here, paste it here, and then we see that all we need to do is just remove this, and here write update validity indication, also here, and also here. And that's it. The next util function that we're going to write is clean collection. This util function gets a collection ID and uses the Wix data APIs. So this function is going to be an async function. Here, what we're going to do is await Wix data query. We're going to query the collection itself. Let's put this down, and now .find .then. Now once the promise is resolved, we want to have the results, and then we want to bulk remove all the items inside of the collection. This also needs to be an async callback, and here we're going to have await Wix data bulk remove, and here we need to pass the collection ID. Here we're going to iterate over all the collection items and remove them. So we need to have here res.items.map, because we want to return an object for each collection item. And now we have here item, and we're going to just return the item ID. Let's just fix the typo here. And now we can start writing the code and functions for the specific logic that we have regarding uploading data. So the first function that we're going to write is upload quiz data. This is going to be an async function. First thing that we're going to do is use clean collection, what we already wrote. We're going to pass the quiz collection ID. And the next thing that we want to do is actually upload the quiz data. So await Wix data And here we're going to use insert, quiz collection ID, and the item that we're going to use and we're going to upload is going to be applicable to the collection. So here we see that we have the databases that we created beforehand, the collections. We have the quiz database. So let's choose the question. Now we can pass it here, and this is going to be question input dot value. The second thing that we're going to upload is background image that we can copy from here. Here we're going to get the SLC of the background image element that we have on stage, because this is where we're going to store it once we upload and then put it inside the SLC of our images. And lastly, quiz image. Here we have $W, quiz image, src. And that's it for uploading the quiz data. Let's now upload also the question data. So upload question data, async. First thing we're going to do is again clean the collection. I'm going to pass question collection data. And now here we're going to bulk insert few elements together. So what we want to do here is await Wix data, bulk insert. We're passing the question collection ID. And now we need to pass an array of items. So what we're going to do is use the text inputs that we have. We're going to slice it for the first 4 elements, and that is because we don't need the question input. And then map. Here we have text input ID, and also we want to have the index. Now that we have this, let's write the callback itself. So what we want to return here is an object with the applicable fields. So the first one is going to be title. This is going to be from the element that we're using right now. So let's write $W, the hashtag, $, text input ID, and value. Next thing that we want to write is correct answer. And now we're going to use actually the radio group that we have. So what we're going to do is correct answer indication dot value, and just return a bool that states whether the index that we have right now, question data. Sorry, right here it's going to be upload question data. And now we can combine all the things in order to write the function that actually uploads all the data together. So let's write const upload data. This is going to be as well an async function. We're not going to pass any parameters. The first thing that we're going to check is whether all the inputs are valid. So is text valid? Also, is images valid? And lastly, whether the correct answer indication is valid as well. If everything is valid, what we want to do is use promise all in order to run the upload question data and upload quiz data together. And then we're going to use an API of the Wix dashboard package that we have here that is specific for dashboards. And we're going to use Wix dashboard show toast. This way we can indicate to the users that everything went successfully. So the type of toast is going to be success, and the message is going to be data was uploaded successfully. And now, if something is wrong and we don't have valid inputs, what we want to do is update validity indications and let the user know which input isn't valid. And second thing that we want to use is Wix dashboard show toast and indicate to the users that something went wrong. So type is going to be error. Whoop. And the message is going to be failed to upload data. And now we can actually put the callback of upload data in the buttons onClick. So let's choose the buttons, change here the ID to be save button, and in the settings let's change this to be save. The secondary action is going to be clear, and here let's write clear btn. And now let's write for save btn on click, we'll put upload data. I accidentally wrote a wrong function name, so let's change this one to be clean form. This is the function that removes all the data from the form. And now let's put and assign for the clear button on click the callback to be clean form function. So we have both of our onClick callbacks, and now the last thing that we have to do is implement the logic that takes the data images that had been uploaded and puts them in the image. So let's use image inputs for each, and then we have image input ID. Here what we have is $W, the asterisk, $, image input ID, and then on change. This callback is going to be an async callback. And now what we're going to do is for each image input, we're going to upload the data and take the file URL. So here file URL equals $W, and just for the auto-completion, let's this time use the actual components. We have here upload files. This needs to be a way to. Then we have the result. We're only uploading one image, so we can reference this image directly. And then we have here file URL. Great. And now what we can do is actually go to the quiz image and in the SRC put file URL. And now all we need to do is just change the IDs here to be the general IDs. So $, and then image input ID. Let's do this here as well. Image input ID, and here we need to replace the substring input with an empty string. And that's it. We have now a functioning dashboard. Everything is connected. The last thing that we're going to do in this part is just connect the dashboard in our editor experience tab. So let's go to the editor experience tab, configuration tab inside, action button settings. We're going to connect the dashboard and right here upload data. And now we've connected the collections to the elements on stage. We implemented all the code together. We've connected the panel to the widget in order to give the users the ability to interact with the widget easily, and also created a dashboard to give the users the ability to manage data easily. And now back to Bar.
Thanks, Ido. Now that we've built and designed the application, let's see how to manage its versions. We will also review how the application behaves once installed on a Wix site. Now we are going to define the installation settings for your application, so exactly how your widget will appear on the site once the app user installs it. You can access the installation settings here through the editor experience and click Edit Installation Settings. I decided to add the widget to the home page of the site so that it's installed directly upon installation of the application, and later the user can move it if they wish. Notice you can also add the widget or even a couple of them to a new site page that will also install with your application. I'm going to choose to have the horizontal as the default preset and add a different preset for mobile, so the vertical preset. This is useful if you want to use presets to define different breakpoints of your widget. Also, another important part is to define the visibility of the widget in the Add panel. The Add panel is where the app's user will be able to see the widget and add it to their site in the same drag and drop fashion as they would any other component. Here I can control if the widget preset will appear in the panel and the preset panel. Let's also add a great image that will showcase our widget inside the Add panel. So here I'm going to upload the image and use the horizontal. And for the vertical, I'll do the same. Great. Let's save. Let's also define the Answers widget, which, as you can see, we don't want it to sort of be a standalone widget and have the user add it themselves. We want it only as part of the application itself. So let's remove it from the Add panel. Select Not Added Automatically for non-essential widgets. Let's also not show this. No, we'll keep it in the preset panel so that users can choose between the different presets. Let's save this as well. Great. We have now finished building our application. Using the Build button, you can create either minor or major versions of your application. Since this is the first time we're building, you can see that it's possible to create a major version. But actually, and the other times, you'll also be able to create minor versions that update automatically on sites. This should only really be done once you are completely finished building the application. I currently sort of want to test my app to make sure that it's working properly on a Wix site. For this, I'll click the Test in Editor button. This will create a test version of my application. And using this flow, I will also be able to install this app as a test version on any Wix site that I choose, even if it's Classic or Studio. Great, the app is ready for testing. Now I can choose a site in order to install it as the test version. As you can see here, we have the CTA test app, and this will install it on the site. Once installed as a test version, I no longer need to install every time. Just click on Test again, or use the keyboard shortcut, and the new changes will be updated automatically. Let's explore how our app works when installed on a site. Here is the editor of the site that we were looking on before when we started building the application. You can see that the app is installed here. First, notice that the installed app has retrieved the font and theme palette of the site automatically, just like we spoke about when talking about theme wiring. It gets the look and feel of the site without having to do a thing, so your app will look great on any site that it is installed on. We can also see that it's responsive. It looks great on desktop, tablet, and mobile views. We can even see the vertical preset that we chose before in the installation settings. We can also check out the element's behaviors. Since all of the design elements are Wix native, the user can customize any of them to fit their needs. For example, let's check out how the widget looks if we decide to hide this element. The user can always add it back using the Add Elements panel. We can also change the font of the answers through the inspector. This really gives your app user full customization options and gives them a lot of flexibility of how their app looks and feels on their site. You can also see here the settings panel that we created and check that it works. Great. We can also see the dashboard open using the button that we configured. Amazing. If your app doesn't have a dashboard but you still want to use the collection is visible in the Collections tab for the user to customize the app's data. You can see it here under the Wix Blocks Education namespace. And that's it. We hope you enjoyed the session and found it helpful. Below you can find helpful documentation on building web applications with blocks and a link to the finished app that we built today. We can't wait to see what you start building.